just want to get on here to talk about Jacoby, as what I'm talking about. If he's able to have a good run game, maybe they go out and win the game. If they're able to add a tight end or maybe add another tackle on that right side instead of having Micah Parsons go off for 6 sacks, they're probably able to win that Packers game. But unfortunately, Mike goes off, has a great game. Jonah Williams, he's just getting abused by Micah game in and game out, drive after drive, and they lose 27-23. And so the bye week happens. There's these chatters. You guys see Adam Schefter reports even before that Packers game. He says something along the lines of, "Hey, Kyler's going to be sitting out this 2 weeks, and then they have the bye week, and he's coming back Monday Night Football against the Cowboys." So you guys are probably expecting it. I'm expecting it. We're all expecting Kyler to come back to play against the Cowboys at AT&T Stadium, right? At the Cowboys Stadium, where he's undefeated. He's 8-9-0, something like that since his high school times. He's undefeated in that stadium. So you have good kind of mojo going in. And this week is kind of a weird week, the week prior, where Kyler's out there practicing. He's not throwing to the ones. He's throwing to practice squad guys. Jacoby's out there throwing to the ones, right? He's throwing to Marv and McBride. Kyler kind of throws to Michael Wilson and Zay Jones, but ultimately, Xavier Weavers of the world. And ultimately, the QB press conference supposed to happen on Wednesday or Thursday. Doesn't. They push it to Friday, and they say some quarterback will talk on Friday. So all these mysterious moves, and ultimately Jacoby Brissett is going to start. That came out Friday or Saturday. Jacoby Brissett is going to start for the against the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. So we're thinking, what's going on? Is this a soft launch, a soft benching of Kyler Murray? Is this the end of the Kyler Murray era? What's going to happen if Jacoby, does bad? Is Kyler starting next week? So you guys see the game. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to stream after the game. I was just not feeling well. So the game happens, right? And Jacoby balls out. They win 27-17. Let me bring up the right. Yeah, they win 27-17. Jacoby has 261 yards, 2 touchdowns. Marv has 7 receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown. McBride has about 50 some odd yards and a touchdown. Everyone's looking great. Everyone's looking fantastic. And at this point, we're just wondering, is Kyler going to be the quarterback against the Seahawks? Depending on who you guys are, you might be split. You might be split whether, hey, we want Jacoby out there or we want Kyler Murray out there. So, whatever camp you're in, now we're at this point today where Kyler's on IR. Jacoby was announced as the starting quarterback for the Seahawks game, and the future of this franchise, right, in terms of quarterback position, the most important position in football, is up in the air, right? Jacoby's 32. Kyler looks like he already played his last game as a Cardinal, and you don't know if you're going to get a good quarterback maybe in the draft, in free agency. You're kind of stuck in this weird quarterback, limbo where Jacoby, he's playing solid, but obviously, are you able to win with Jacoby, right? That's the main question. He's 1-2 as a starter right now. 2 games against, the Colts, who are probably one of the best teams in the league right now. The Packers, one of the best, NFC teams in the league right now. And he won against the Cowboys, who have, a high-powered offense, but at the same time, they have a pretty weak defense, at the time of that Monday Night Football game. So, want to see what you guys thought about it. I'll go back through some of the comments and see what's going on. Or you can get a quarterback in the draft. I think someone said Ty Simpson. If he comes out in the draft, yeah, that'd be great. The Alabama quarterback. Yeah, what do you think about Manning to Harrison Jr.? What? I don't know what that is, but yeah, also Harrison Sr. right before that Monday night game, either that Sunday or that Monday during the day, an article drops off from buddy Josh Weinfuss, and he says, there's this quote from Marv Sr. saying that he can't watch this offense. This offense is tough to watch, which he's not lying, right? He said that if he was in his prime receiving form and he was inserted into this offense, he wouldn't be a Hall of Famer. That's true, right? Everything that he said in that article, saying that this offense isn't built for Marv. This offense isn't good. It's not built for good for receivers. No one's trying to watch this offense. It was either, that I think that article, especially coming, out of ESPN with Josh Weinfuss, coming from Marv Senior, Hall of Fame receiver, and him being, I'm glad that happened, right? I'm glad that he was able to go out there and be like, hey, I'm sick of watching this offense because no one's gonna say it. Everyone within that locker room, within the team right now, they're gonna speak positive of it. You guys saw Gannon a few weeks ago when he said, "Hey, I'm glad, I'm happy on the way this looks." Drew called it his best game of the season. All that BS. Drew Petzing, he's saying the same thing over and over again, saying, "Oh, this offense isn't changing. This offense is doing good." Marvin, he's playing within his role. Yada yada yada. You just think there's within the organization, there's like an elephant in the room, right? That Drew Petzing can't call a great game for a receiver, and then before the game, I guess there's rumors out there from the players in the organization saying on the team saying that before the game they had to they made this decision, or they made this executive game plan decision right before during warmups, right, maybe 2 hours before the game started. They made a conscious decision to get Marv more involved early. And guess what happened, right? Marv had, probably one of his best games this year, probably not as a pro because last year that Rams game was incredible, but this year for sure he had the best game so far, right? He had the best game of his career of this year so far. He's putting Deron Bland, all pro corner, on skates, and he's just looking like the fourth overall pick, like how you drafted. It took 20 odd games for this coaching staff, not, I wouldn't say Gannon, but more importantly Drew Petzing, to realize, hey, I got to get this young stud of a receiver that we have involved, right? Potential Hall of Fame, All Pro, Pro Bowl caliber receiver. Let's get him involved. He's 6'4", runs some of the crispiest routes. You guys might say different, but he has great hands, right? He's still the same great receiver we saw at Ohio State, right? The glimpses that we see throughout his career, right, against the Rams game, against the Dolphins game, against I'm skipping it, but the 49ers game last year, against the Cowboys this year. You see those glimpses of him being great, even at the end of the let me see, the Seahawks, the first Seahawks game, he was playing great. They almost had a comeback. So he's played great, this season in glimpses. Now he was able to put a full game together when obviously the main, he's the main receiver, right? And Jacoby's able to stand in the pocket and deliver him the ball, which is a great thing. But my questioning is right now, you guys could help me out with it too, where it's saying, why did we wait so long to emphasize Marv? Did it really take Marvin Harrison Sr., his father, to go out there and say something? And if that was the case, then honestly, in my opinion, you shouldn't be a head coach. You shouldn't be a offensive coordinator if it took you 27 games to realize, hey, maybe we should get our fourth overall pick involved in the offense instead of trying to run it. It took James Conner being hurt, Trey Benson being hurt. It took Kyler Murray being hurt, and it took what's his name, Michael Wilson, being off the team for you to really not have a good run game in order for you to pass the ball to Marv. So stuff like that is making me see that Drew Petzing is definitely not the guy. I mean, this year I've always said he wasn't the guy, but this sort of not involving Marv is gonna, it just doesn't make me believe in this coaching staff going forward. And speaking about going forward here, we'll look at some of the comments. We have Sean Manning. Yeah, we've seen Manning to Harrison. I don't think maybe Arch Manning. Yeah, I don't know, because he's playing better, I guess, now, but he's just real up and down. I think he might stay even one more year in college, just because I don't think his draft stock's really up there right now. I think Sims going up there. Just I don't think he's gonna be in that range unless the Cardinals he does declare for the draft, and the Cardinals do take maybe mid to late first on him. Maybe, I don't know what happens if he goes lower, but that could be something. Um, Dominic right here, bro. My problem with Monty is that he doesn't want to trade for a solid player now because he'd have to pay them later. Um, I don't think he's scared. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think he's scared to trade for players because he loves his draft picks. I think that's more of a thing where he doesn't want to waste his draft picks, especially on a year. I mean, and honestly, we're 3-5. We still have some hope at playoff chance. I think the percent I saw was about 12 to 15% on playoff odds for the Cardinals. I mean, it's gonna be tough in this division, but it's just we're not at a point to trade for a player. Whether it was Brees Hall, whether it was one of the other Jets players that were traded, whether it was who other else it was maybe some offensive lineman that could have been available. But I just don't think you're at a point right now where you could trade for someone, right? Maybe if we won that Titans game that we should have won, maybe won the 49ers game instead of letting off a field goal. Won the what was the other game? Won the Packers game or one of the other won two of the five games that we lost, then maybe, right? I'm looking at 49ers and Seahawks because those two were the closer ones where 49ers last second field goal, it was just a dumb situation. Seahawks, same thing. You miss the short kick and you give them basically really good field position. So if you're able to win those two games, you're what is it? 5-3 right now or 5-2? I forget what it is. 5-3. Then yeah, maybe go out and trade for a player like a Brees Hall, right? Spend your third, fourth round pick on a Brees Hall, but I just don't think they were in a situation to do that right now. So that's my take on it. He's able to he pays his players, right? He paid Tomlinson, he paid Kaiser White, he paid Sean Murphy Bunting, he paid two D tackles, even though they weren't really long term deals like that. He still paid him a good chunk of money for 3 years. So I don't think he's scared to pay someone. I think he's just scared to lose his draft picks and stuff like that. Ben, I'm scared. Yeah, is it that serious? Yeah, I just unfortunately, I think this is probably the last time we've seen Kyler play on this Cardinals team. So and unfortunately, Kyler fans, Kyler truthers, this is probably the end of it. He is on IR, so we won't see him for the next um, 4 weeks, 4 games, and those are kind of critical games coming up. I think that was probably the best bet for Gannon and Austin Ford right now is to just IR him, especially for that foot. So he's going to be out against the Seahawks. He's going to be out against the 49ers, out against the Jaguars, and out against the Buccaneers. 4 games, right? He's eligible to come back December 7th versus the Rams at home. So that's going to be, a really telling game. Let's see if Jacoby's able to get some wins under his belt and, kind of build momentum. The Seahawks are just going to be a tough team, first and foremost. Next week, I won't be able to live stream it. Hopefully, I'll be able to watch it and tweet out and put some stories and post out. But ultimately, that Seahawks game is going to be a tough one. I mean, we haven't beat the Seahawks in 2 3 years. They've swept us every single year, especially under Jonathan Gannon. So I don't. That's going to be a tough win. Hopefully, I mean, shoot, if Jacoby's able to get out a win versus the Cowboys, get a win against the Seahawks, and build momentum versus that 49ers game, I feel like that 49ers game it's a winnable game, right? You have Mac Jones or Brock Purdy playing. They have no receivers at this point. Who knows? Ricky Pearsall will be back. Who knows if George Kittle he's slowly coming back right now. I think he played his first game last week or 2 weeks ago. So I feel like that 49ers game is very winnable. That Jaguars game is very winnable. That's at home. So we have two home games, right? That 49ers and Jags game, if we're able to win that game, win those two games, right now what are we? 3-5. So 3-5, let's say, unfortunately we lose to the Seahawks, we're 3-6. Then we win 49ers, Jaguars, we're 4-6. 4-6, and we play the Buccaneers, the Rams, the Texans, and we go into the final stretch of the season. So it doesn't look good. Obviously, having that 5 game losing skid is going to be tough on any team, no matter who you are. But, if we're able to get a win against the 49ers and Jaguars, I feel like you feel pretty good going, maybe not the Buccaneers, because I think they're a pretty good team. I think they just have a better overall team and roster than what the Cardinals have. But you play versus the Rams at home. The Rams are a tough team, but they're not unbeatable, right? We've beat them with less talent. The Texans, I feel like that could be a very solid win. I feel like you could win that against the Falcons. I'm sure you can win that against the Bengals. It's gonna be maybe a shootout, but you're able to win that. And then here, let me put all these together. So you were 3-5. Let's say 3-6, 4-6, 5-6, 5-7, 6-7. Then we go 7-7, 8-7, 9-7. You're 9-7 in my eyes going into at Rams the last game of the season. Could be 10-7. So obviously that is a lot of hope. That is a lot of, hey, if Jacoby still plays well, because honestly, he's a career backup, and maybe this offense is perfect for his skill set. I hope so. I hope it is. He's a big, strong arm quarterback that can sit in the pocket. In years past, with the Colts or with the Patriots and stuff like that, he's been looked at as kind of a high end backup, low end starter. So if he's able to come around with a few wins, and if I, the way I see these teams, we have a solid schedule going down, especially if this defense, we get into that, especially if this defense keeps on playing up to par. I mean, I feel like we could, get some wins against the Bengals, Falcons, Texans, possibly the Rams at home, and the 49ers and Jaguars at home. So I feel like those could be wins. And you're going into at the Rams last game of the season for maybe a playoff spot if you're 10-7 at that point. So I don't think all hope is lost. You just got to keep on playing up to your standards, up to where the team played on Monday Night Football. Dominic saying, so do you think we trade Kyler and try to find a taller pocket passer or a Jacoby type build / scheme QB? Dominic, I think this is what's probably going to happen in March. Kyler is probably going to get traded to the Jets. The Jets just stacked up on 4 first-round picks in the next 2 years. So I'm not saying Kyler's going to get all 4 draft picks. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying in March, they have a chance to maybe send 1 first-round pick. Maybe send, maybe a few second-round picks. Whatever that looks like for Kyler and the Cardinals. Let's say if Kyler stays, maybe on IR, maybe they say, hey, his foot's still just not responding properly. I want him to be 100% when he comes back off of IR and he basically spends the rest of the season on IR. Then yeah, maybe his trade value is still up there in terms of, hey, he's still a high-end starting quarterback. If not, then I do believe he can still get some sort of trade value, whether that's with the Vikings, which I don't think you want to see him in the NFC. AFC, the Jets make total sense. Cleveland maybe, but I think that's just a bad team in general. I don't think I just don't think that that'll make sense. Shoot, another team I'm trying to think of. I can't think of another team right now. AFC North. I don't think any of them would have any interest in Kyler. AFC East. I don't think any of them would. Maybe if McDaniels is still in Miami, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Tua just got paid, so that's just a weird situation. Yeah, the main ones I can see are just the Jets right now, who new regime, has draft capital because Monty loves his draft picks, right? And I feel like that could be one of the main. I'll call it right now. I think Kyler probably goes to the Jets in March for maybe 1 first-round pick or some first-round pick swaps, whatever that looks like for us. But yeah, I think he'll go to the Jets. I'm calling it right now. If you guys want to quote me on it, you guys can quote me on it. But I think him, especially with the Jets, what the Jets did this trade deadline, where they sold, Sauce Gardner, they sold Quinnen Williams. I feel like they're not they're not going to sell Brees Hall because they want that offense to work. They've been having a great defense. They're just trying to stack up on offense. So whether you trade a first for Kyler and use the rest of the draft capital for an offensive line, skill players, defense, stuff like that, you're able to rebuild that Jets team. If you hit on your draft picks pretty quickly, you still have a few day two picks too, the second, third round picks they did trade for. So that could be an interesting situation. Um, Dominic saying Kurt Warner broke it down pretty well in terms of scheme fit and catering your offense to a specific player skill set. Yeah, and the second part of your question too, or a Jacoby type build slash scheme QB. I think Jacoby, he's gonna be the quarterback for the rest of the season. That's how I see it playing out, and then he'll be the quarterback he signed for I believe 2 or 3 years this past off season. So he's gonna be here definitely for sure next year. I don't see them moving on from him at all. Like I don't see them cutting unless in some crazy situation where Jacoby goes back to playing like a backup quarterback and like a journeyman QB, and then Kyler, comes back off of IR, and then that's a whole another thing. But I believe, Jacoby's going to be the quarterback for the rest of the season, next season. And you either have, I don't think you pay another journeyman quarterback because, who's available now? I don't think anyone's going into the offseason where you feel like there's no Sam Darnold, going into the free agency next year. There's no Daniel Jones, even though those sound like nasty names, but there's no one where you feel good about going in. You have a bunch of middling guys coming up in free agency. So probably mid to late first round quarterback. I believe that's an option. Um, Maybe a Ty Sims and maybe an Arch Manning, maybe Mendoza if you get up there. I don't know how that looks, but I think definitely you get a quarterback day one, day two. First 2 rounds of the draft in this offseason, you're going to get a quarterback regardless. So be wary for that, and be on the lookout for a Jets trade for Kyler Murray. I believe that's what's going to happen. Um, yeah, like the Kurt Warner thing. I do believe, as a good offensive coordinator, you mold your offense around your skill set, right? Whether you have a mobile quarterback that's able to play, out of structure, or you have a quarterback that just stands in the pocket, doesn't run, and just delivers missiles, right? And I think the thing with Drew Petzing that I hated to see was he has his offense, right? His Cleveland offense, his kind of mixture of 49ers of Eagles kind of mixed in. Yeah, the offense is probably a good offense, right? It's an offense a lot of people are running right now. It's a West Coast scheme offense, a bit off of those principles. But at the end of the day, if Kyler can't run that offense, why are you still forcing him to try and be in that offense? Why are you forcing a square peg into a round hole? It doesn't make sense. And then, yeah, your offense works now because you have a slow, immobile quarterback, but at the same time, how come you couldn't do anything to help Kyler? That's my main thing, because I do believe, I posted out there on Twitter, I believe that I believe Kyler's a better player, overall pound for pound than Jacoby Brissett, but unfortunately, Jacoby is a lot better suited for this, type of situation, this type of offense, where he's able to just sit in the pocket, wait a little bit, scan the field, and just deliver a missile to whatever person's open. So I do believe he's better for those type of situations, but it's just unfathomable how it took 8 weeks into the season for you to realize you have a great receiver in Marv, right? Because before this, Kyler or not, Marv wasn't featured in the offense a lot, right? He was running the same type of routes. Now, I put it up on Twitter right now that Marv's route tree, his route tree looked great. He was on the left side. He was playing X. He was playing the slot. He was playing, number two receiver. He was going all over the field, and that's how he was able to make so many plays. But this offense is just, I think now they're finally realizing that they can pass the ball. That is their strength, right? Their strength is Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, Michael Wilson. That's their strength, right? That's you don't have anything in the run game right now. You could barely run block. You're slightly better in pass pro, so just lean into that, right? You have a strong on quarterback, lean into that. And now, since maybe the Marv Senior, comments got out, Petzing wanted to save his job and go out there and feature Marv. But other than that, I'm surprised it took this long. and happy that we're able to find someone that fits this scheme. But at the same time, you should have been able to change your scheme to a better quarterback a while ago. I mean, to fit the better quarterback a while ago. So, Cards universe, if Petsing sticks around, the Cards just need a game manager. That type of quarterback fits Petsing's system. Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, a game manager does work better for this offense, and unfortunately, like guys that love to create, outside of the structure, like Kyler, like maybe a Mahomes, someone like Josh Allen, maybe they wouldn't be where they are within this type of offense either, because you're kind of restricting what makes them great, right? What makes Lamar Jackson great is because his athletic ability. What makes Kyler great? He's able to scramble. What makes Mahomes great? He's able to scramble and make extend plays. But if your whole offense is set around, hey, I gotta do my 3, 5, 7 step drop back and hit this guy right here. If not, I'm screwed, or I hit this guy. If not, hit him, and whatever situation happened in front of you, and if you're off timing, then it just throws off the whole rhythm of the offense. And I just feel like you kind of did a disservice to Kyler in terms of not changing this offense. You had a whole offseason, you had a whole 3 years to build this offense out, and unfortunately, you didn't do anything to help build in Kyler's strength, right? Because we've seen him work. We've seen him work with Cliff. He played great. He was able to throw the ball down the field all over the place and play outside of structure where it felt natural, but then also play in structure where, hey, we're gonna take a shot right here. Just stay in the pocket, take that deep shot, and you're able to make a big play. So that just was never the case with Drew Petzing. Um, why does Petzing start calling a better game and people blame Murray? Yeah, like I don't think the Packers and Colts game were really much different, but I do believe this Cowboys game was a whole lot different. Where, hey, even though we're up, let's go stick a dagger into the Cowboys defense right now and go make a play, go get a touchdown. And I think that's what we did. And like I said, I don't know if it's a mixture because he feels more comfortable now with Jacoby. You kind of when your back is against the wall, you're 2-5, you're scratching and clawing. People are calling for your job. He'll be he's lying, but I bet you he feels the pressure, right? Drew Pressing feels the pressure. He hears the noise. And I think for him, he ultimately, I don't know if it was the Marv's. It's such a coincidence that this article dropped right, Monday game day. Article drops and he says, hey, you know, before the game, a few hours before the game, we just decided, hey, let's get Marv involved. What was your game plan if it wasn't to get Marv involved, right? Was your game plan just, hey, let's go run the ball and get Trey McBride his targets and we're just trying to escape, just escape out of Dallas? No, if your game plan coming in wasn't to get Marv the ball, then I'm wanting to find out what was the game plan. What was your game plan in winning this game if it wasn't getting Marv involved early? So that's the whole thing in of itself. Um, Here we go. What kind of compensation could Murray get us back? Um, I like I said, I think the Jets they loaded up on those first round picks, so I think it's one of those first round picks, whether it's from the Colts, I think that Colts could be a late first round pick. That would be something that Kyler could get, especially if people don't think he's that great anymore. Depending on what money Austin Ford can also grab, because you guys saw that first year, that 2023 draft. He was able to navigate draft position and he's able to navigate draft picks. So if that makes sense, then yeah, I think the Jets probably make the best sense. They have the draft capital, they have the cap space, and they also have a need at quarterback on different conference, and they just loaded up on draft picks. So I think that's probably the most likely spot. Um, Reese says, realistically, we only won against the 3-1 Cowboys is because the defense finally balled out. Second half offense was sloppy as usual, but the turnovers, the defense has saved the game. Yeah, I believe it. You know, Here, let's go straight down right here. Yeah, the defense kind of balled out. Defense had an amazing game. The Walter Nolan, I know I didn't talk about him yet. He played a great game. We were waiting. Here, let me put this right here. All right, so Arizona Cardinals defense, Denzel Burke, he played an amazing game. He had he had 7 total tackles, 2 pass defense. He broke up that deep pass in the fourth quarter to, I believe it was CD Lamb, George Pickens, whichever one of the two. He played great. I think a lot of the rookies from this 2024 draft class, 2025 draft class played great. Denzel Burke had a great game. Will Johnson played another great game. It wasn't as great as we're used to him being, right? He wasn't the number one corner this game or this week, but he played, lights off for him. Walter Nolan, he had 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, 1 pass defense, one swatted ball, 1 QB hit. He was all over the place. For that being his first game back against a solid Cowboys offensive line and coming off an injury, it's not like his first game of the season. His first game off an injury. He had that calf strain, and he came in, and you just immediately felt his presence, right? He blew up the Cowboys guard. It was able to get that tackle for loss. He's big, he's physical. He's everything that you see off of like a prime, Darnell Dockett or like a Calais Campbell, where I don't even think Calais at his point was this quick. Calais was just pretty big and powerful, but Walter Nolan, he's quick. His first step's crazy, and he just plays the game just so naturally. Like he's able to swim move the guard and get behind him to get that tackle for loss. He's able to swipe the guard's hands away and get to Dak Prescott. He's able to time that Dak Prescott pass, so he's able to block it. It was so great to see, especially from this regime, because you had Paris. He was your first round pick. He's played great. I think he's playing at a Pro Bowl level right now. Year after that, you have Marv, who hasn't, honestly, being realistic and honest right here, he hasn't really lived up to that fourth overall pick so far, right? He's had glimpses of it, but he just hasn't lived up to it. Like Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas last year, he hasn't been great this year. Or just maybe like Jamar Chase, he was drafted high. Stuff like that, he hasn't been living up to that potential, right? Darius Robinson, another defensive lineman, he was a late first round pick, but he played, he's been playing. The first year he was out, played middling when he came back. This year so far, halfway through the season, he's played all right. There's been flash. I think last week was his best game. He's been getting better as the games go on, but he didn't really have that pop as you thought of, having a first round defensive lineman, or you saw in training camp he was a beast. But, everything you see out of Walter Nolan, what happened in training camp, what happened in Cowboys game, is everything you hope for from the 16th overall pick, right? He was in conversation for the number one defensive lineman in the draft. Him, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, who else was on? I think the 49ers first round pick, I forget his name. He was in that conversation. Luckily, the Cardinals were able to get him at 16th overall. Unfortunately, it took excuse me. Unfortunately, it took 8 games for him to finally show up and finally play and not be on PUP or IR. But he played great against the Cowboys. It was amazing to see, and you hope next week against the Seahawks he's able to play another great game and he's able to disrupt Sam Darnold and really give this defense their first true sort of presence on the defensive lineman since Calais left almost 10 years ago, right? Because Calais left, in I believe it was 2016, and he played great for Jacksonville. He played great for the Ravens, played great, for all these different teams, and he's still playing great now. Shout out to Calais. And you just never felt that presence on the defensive line. You never felt Robert Kimdichie was never that guy. You had J.J. Watt, but he was hurt for most of the time. You had, the 2 free agents last year who just missed time. It's always been just a miss at that defensive tackle spot. Same thing with Darius Robinson. He, you think you got a first round pick defensive lineman, but he just hasn't played great. So seeing Walter Nolan just completely disrupt the Cowboys O-line on a snap count too. Like I said, this is his first game back. So he's on a snap count, right? You didn't see him at all, but the times he was in there, you felt his presence. And that was able to open up, Josh Sweat had a great game. He had two sacks, right? Calais Campbell had another great game. He had 2 sacks as well. So if you're able to have at least one game wrecker, right, defensive lineman in that rotation, like a Walter Nolan, everyone else plays better, right? You had Walter Nolan in there, and then guess what? Cody Simon, he's a late round. He's a rookie, but he's a late round guy right now. Here, let me switch this. So he's a late round guy right now, and he went and had three tackles, one fumble recovery, or he had a forced fumble. Right, he played great. So all these players are finally playing up, right? Because this is what happens when you have a great pass rusher, right? This is what happens when you had great prime Chandler Jones, right? The quarterback has to hurry up. They feel that pressure from the left side. They feel that interior pressure, so it gets them off their step. Whether it's a few seconds, whether it's just mentally, they feel hurried up, and so that's what happened. Maybe that's why Denzel Burke had a great game because Dak was maybe hurrying up things. He wasn't so accurate, and so they gave Denzel Burke and Will Johnson and Buda Baker chance to kind of play a little more free and get a chance at hitting a ball away, deflecting a ball, or maybe getting that turnover, stuff like that. So I believe if Walter Nolan keeps on playing at this pace, he's going to be a hell of a player, ending this year and especially going into those late divisional games, right? We could bring the schedule right here. Those late divisional games against like Tampa Bay, I feel like that'll be a big game against the 49ers in 2 weeks, the Seahawks next week. You play the 49ers, I think, twice. The Rams at the end of the year, you play them twice. So if Walter Nolan, we have 4 games until that Rams game. So basically 5 weeks until that Rams game. If if Walter Nolan still, kind of takes this next month, these next 4 or 5 games to really get his wheels underneath him and understand the speed of the NFL, the game, and everything, and he balls out against the Rams at home, you know, that's December 7th. That'll be a huge game if we're able to build momentum like that, and he's able to ball out against the Rams, and you have the Texans, Falcons, and Bengals next 3 games, and the Rams again. Like I said, I don't want to put too much stock into this Monday night game, especially because I think the Cowboys defense is a little bit weaker. But if you're able to have use this game to build momentum for these young defensive players like Will Johnson, Walter Nolan, Denzel Burke, and Rabbit, right? Taylor Demerson. Jacoby's playing great. He's getting everyone involved. As a Cardinals team, you have a good chance at really changing things around. I know people around the league. You hear people saying this is the best 2-5 team you probably never seen, right? Because their point differentials great outside of the fourth quarter. They're in one-score games every single game, and it's just those little things like maybe this Cowboys game kind of helped them be like, hey, we know how to win now. We know how to win those close games when it matters most. We have a bunch of young guys playing, right? Most of the players on these teams playing out versus the Cowboys, they're drafted players from this organization, right? Dermercado was a free agent, right? Marv draft pick, Michael Wilson draft pick, Trey McBride he was on here before, Elijah Higgins, he was a undrafted free agent. Denzel Burke draft pick, Davis Gaither, he was brought in by this organization. Malk Wilson, he was brought in. Will Johnson, Walter Nolan, Garrett Williams, Max Melton, Cody's. All these guys are Monty Austin draft picks. So if you're able to have those guys start playing with a lot of confidence now and saying, hey, we beat a team prime time, the defense was able to figure it out, then I just feel like that builds so much momentum going forward for this organization where, hey, maybe next week, I'm not going to say next week anything because I feel like next week's going to be a tough game. But if you're able to see, hey, maybe we lose against Seahawks, but we have a solid next couple of games, then, I feel like maybe you can sneak into the playoffs, and Gannon plays great. I mean, Gannon, he has a defense playing great. So does Nick Rallis. So, man, there's, a win. Obviously, I may be overthinking it. I may be thinking too much about it, but I do believe this type of win, right, especially of how they played, will be so much better to build momentum and confidence, especially for the young guys going forward. One thing I did want to say, get Jonah Williams off my team. I don't care what you got to do. I don't care if you got to cut him. I don't care if you got to put in I pick up a street, put someone from center to right tackle. I've been saying put Beecham in at right tackle. I don't want to see Jonah Williams starting because every time there's something going on, there's some sort of pressure within our quarterback. It doesn't matter if it's Kyler, it doesn't matter if it's Jacoby Brissett, it doesn't matter if it's in the run game, it doesn't matter if it's in the pass game. If Jonah Williams is out there, I know the other team's best edge rusher is going to probably get about 2 sacks off of him. And this is his last year of his deal, right? Last year I really wanted Josh Simmons from, I believe, Ohio State. The guy that went to the Chiefs, the right tackle. I feel like he would have been perfect here. Unfortunately, he got picked before we were able to pick, but we got Will Johnson. Great pick anyways. Amazing pick. But that was my choice. If you fell to the second round, but man, being able to get a good right tackle, I think would ease this offensive line. But Paris is playing great left side. Evan Brown is playing better, but he's not going to be a household name. He's just a solid guy. Um, Yoda Froholt, he's playing solid, right? Will Hernandez, I think, is really giving some juice to this offensive line in terms of the run game. He's playing great. I feel like we got to just re-sign him at the end of the year. He's just playing, lights out. And then you just have a turnstile cone at right tackle. You just gotta get that right tackle off my team right now, and I feel like we'll play great. Like I said, my pick would be Kelvin Beachum right now. But man, you gotta do something about that right tackle spot. That's my main point for this team going forward. So if you guys have any questions, drop them in the chat. I think we're gonna be done right now. So if you guys have anything we want to talk about, let me know. If you guys haven't, if you guys can go to my YouTube, subscribe to YouTube. I'll really appreciate it. We're trying to just build this up, right? You guys see me, especially my people on Instagram, right? You guys see me for a while here, so trying to just build this up as much as I can. People on Twitter, same thing. You guys can, just sub to YouTube, leave a chat there. That's the main way I'm able to see stuff. It's tough going through the Instagram and Twitter stuff right now. YouTube is a whole lot easier to watch all this, and yeah, that's pretty much it for me. If you guys do have anything else that comes up afterwards, DM me, comment, tweet at me, leave some comments, whatever you guys see. I will be, hopefully, I don't think I'll be going live after the game this weekend, but I will be talking about it. We will be posting stuff. If you guys do want to talk to me, I'm more active on Twitter, on X. So you guys know it's the same Cardinals update on all platforms. So go over there, let me know what you guys think. I do drop some stuff that's over there only just because that's where I'm able to get paid from, just full transparency. And yeah, if you guys have, anything else, like I said, comment, subscribe, tweet me, DM me, and if you guys want to talk about it, we can talk about pretty much anything you guys like.